So I would like to start our new session. Okay. Let's start with the new session. The first presentation is of Filippo Addari. I think should be connected online. Filippo, are you there? Yes.
Yeah. I'm connected.
Thank you very much. So since we are very tight on schedule, I'll leave the floor to you. 20 minutes for your presentation, and I also thank you already in advance for that.
Yes, thank you everybody. Don't worry, I won't talk 20 minutes. It's a bit too long. And I'm also planning to change a bit my presentation because I can't refrain from addressing some of the issues that emerge in the previous discussion about social impact bonds. I must comment on the various remarks because I've been personally involved in the making of the social impact investing agenda in the UK since 2004. So there are some considerations to be made in order to better understand the dynamic and the potential for application. So number one, social impact bond is the flagship product of the social impact investing agenda of the UK, which is, first of all, not even a policy, it's a political ideology, because it's an expression of the third way. Previously, it was mentioned the American context, so the new democratic policy that was the vision of Clinton, but more specifically the third way in the UK, which in a nutshell, somehow you might call it an hybrid between market and state solutions, but in this case, it's actually a neoliberal politics because it's market solutions to the reform of the welfare state. And it's not correct to say that the impact investing developed in a context where there is an absence of welfare state. I mean, the UK invented the welfare state together with Germany. So it's exactly the opposite. Is because the existence of the welfare state and the challenge to reform it, and in particular to innovate, that trigger that what was a policy as an expression of an ideology. Secondly, it started, if we want to give to be specific about the birth of this policy, it starts in 2000 with the setting of an expert group. Now they are very common and even trendy, but at the time they were not at all. So the British government, Tony Blair, so New Labour's, they set up a task force on social investments. Now it wasn't social impact investment, but anyway, it was a task force bringing together government from people and public administration, financiers and bankers, and civil society third sectors, looking at how finance could transform public services and in particular social services in partnership of what you called the third sector. It was initiated in 2000, it was promoted by the Liberal government, and then it was transferred essentially into the coalition in 2010. So a government led by the Conservatives, the Tories, and this is a very important aspect. So as this policy has been flexible and adapted, moving from the left to the right and being adopted and, redesigned and launched as Big Society. One of the reasons for that is not just that there is an alignment in terms of values and practice, but also because it was a response to the global financial crisis in 2008. Being the UK dependent on financial services, it became also vital for the City of London to promote a very very visible commitment to transform finance and put finance at the service of society and the real economy in particular. So you need to understand this evolution and complexity in order to understand the success. And it's not by chance that in 2012, if I'm not wrong, when the UK government had held the presidency of the G8, at the time G8, social impact investing became one of the main items in the agenda of the G20. It was promoted by government, and as you say, the Prime Minister put its face on this. Within this context, social impact bond was one of the measures launched within the Big Society capital, as I said, but developed before then, but together with many other policies like tax breaks on investments for social innovation, the setting of a national promotional bank, the equivalent of GDP, to be clear, Big Society capital, as a capital providers for the market making. So investing in other financial intermediaries and investors, private investors. I'm saying so because when we talk then about application of impact investing on social impact bond in particular, it's not a technical matter, certainly it's not an academic, it's political. And without politics, you don't go anywhere, because one of the main sectors impacted by social finance is the public sector, and in particular the public administration. If you don't have politics leading the way, it turns into an academic exercise. And Italy hasn't seen the implementation of anything far close to the social impact bond, because there has never been a political drive pushing for this. There was important remarks made before, social impact bonds are not bonds, correct. The name came up as a marketing choice, because bond, as you know, it doesn't, in impact bond, does not refer the bond as a financial instrument, but bond as connection, relationship. It indicates the partnership between the public and the private sector, and the third sector, sorry, in that case. There are some other important remarks to make. Number one, the problem today, at the time it was certainly about financing, so who was able to finance this. But at the current state, with the growth of the ESG investments, so sustainable finance, there is certainly no lack of funds. The problem of the implementation is on the other side, is on the outcome buyers side, which in principle should be the public administration. So I'm not going to repeat how the social impact bonds work, it was already covered. But if you don't have an institution, let's call it an institution, buying the social outcomes generated by the social outcome bonds, the entire scheme collapses. And unless you have philanthropic institutions or local communities buying the outcomes, it's possible, it's unlikely. The main outcome buyer is the public administration. So we go back to square one. If you don't engage the public administration, and if you don't create the legal and the administrative framework that enable the public administration to do so, social impact bonds or similar or social outcome contracts or any kind of these kind of measures won't have a take off. And one of the problems in Italy is exactly this lack of administrative and legal frameworks. I'm saying so because since last year, we have been involved in the design of a social outcome contract for the work inclusion of prisoners in Italy. I mean, there is a program design launched by the Ministry of Justice, and we apply this in a very small pilot in Milan, and we have been working with the European Investment Bank and the Ministry of Justice to design an implementable program, implementable meaning addressing also those administrative legal issues. And so far, it has been really a challenge to carry out this kind of initiative. And certainly what we don't see is a real political will, but also an understanding within the institution about the implications, the positive implications, I mean, and especially the possibility to finance innovation within the public sector. Said so, stay with me on that because the European Investment Bank, the Ministry of Justice, and now also CDP, the National Promotional Bank, are with the new CEO coming from EIF. They are keen on this kind of new financial instruments. And because the PNRR, the Program for Resilience and Reconstruction, there are also the resources for the capacity building, but also room for innovation within the public administration. So if there is a moment, a window of opportunity to implement and test those new instruments is certainly now, but it's about doing it rather than keep on talking about it. Now, if we look, it was mentioned also about the impact measurement, as one of the vital components. Certainly it is, because one of the aspects, the most important in my view, of the social impact bond is not really the role of private finance financing this, but it's what is called the payment by results. The fact that public administration pays not for input, but it pays for even outcomes, outputs and outcomes. It's what I say, I define the public administration going shopping for results, which would really change the public administration as we know it. Said so, it's challenging for public administration to operate without a framework to identify goals, but also criteria to identify goals. So in this sense, we have seen over the last 2 years regulatory effervescence in the European Commission related to the sustainable finance, and in particular to define the standards for sustainable finance, which has produced what is called the taxonomy, the sustainable finance taxonomy, which is the framework to define what is sustainable finance and what is not. I'm not going to touch this. I understood, I mean, you talk about that probably yesterday, but part of that exercise, there is also the what is called the social taxonomy. So within the sustainable finance platform, which is, let's say, the program set up by the European Commission to implement the policy goals following under the European Green Deal, there is a component called the social taxonomy. That is the initiative within which social impact is defined as a public standard for the first time. And so that is a very important initiative for this discussion, because once the European standard is defined, that will trickle down in all policies and programs of the public administration, starting certainly with the European programs, that then it will be adopted by national government and local authorities. Now, at the moment, I have a couple of slides that I can share with you guys, but just to give you a sense of where we are. Shall I share?
Yes, sure. Yes, sure.
Let me see. Right. Can you see?
Not yet. Yes, now we can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to give you a gist. I was planning to go more in detail, but because the remarks on the social impact bonds, I will go a bit faster. In any case, it was probably useful to make this link, because the social impact bonds will have to refer to this social taxonomy. So before the social taxonomy, essentially it was, free land to do whatever you wanted. I mean, talking about investors and public administration. Now, as the European Commission is working on this, it will set the standards, and the standards will influence both public and private actors. Now, it's important to clarify that at the moment, we have just a proposal made by the expert group. So this is not in law, and we don't even know if and when it will become law. I suspect that it's just a matter of time, because as the environmental social taxonomy, so the taxonomy defining what sustainable finance as related to climate and the environment is or is not, inevitable and underpinning the ecological transition, then the European policy foresees an ecological but also a just transition, so related to essentially social inclusion, social equity. Therefore, the social taxonomy becomes the instrument to set the standards in relation to the international standards, starting with the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. and also to attract in private investments in the field, but also to tackle the equivalent of greenwashing, that we could call it social washing, although this is not really used as an expression, but clearly it will come up. It will become more popular. Consider another thing. When this exercise was started, we were talking about a pre-COVID, pre-war situation. As the previous speakers have shown, the two combined crises, so the pandemics and the war, will have a scaring social impact in Europe, in the world. Therefore, the crisis, exactly as it happened in 2008 with social impact investing, especially in the UK, the effects of the combination of those two crises are going to accelerate the development and the implementation of this social taxonomy, whatever shape is going to take. But as we know, already there are some, and this is what I want to show you, a couple of firm points. And so the relation to human rights, and in particular, this is very relevant to us, the protection and promotion of working conditions. But let's look at it. Let's look at the structure more in detail. I will just give you a couple of hints about what is important here. Number one, it has been designed based on the stakeholder approach. So looking at social taxonomy, and in particularly in relation to the workforce, to the users or consumers, and the communities where the economic activities took place. And the implementation, don't forget that, is related to both financial intermediaries, as well as, and investors, as well as companies. At the moment, mainly large companies, but the plan is to be extended also to all companies. And certainly, in any case, all the companies, so including the medium and small companies, are indirectly affected by this, by the taxonomy. I can explain, if you are interested in this, I can explain it later. The taxonomy has three objectives, mainly decent work, living standards, adequate living standard and well-being, and inclusive and sustainable communities. And those objectives have sub-objectives. Now, I'm not going to give you the list, but it's those informations are available online. And the aim, again, giving you just the essence, is number one, to establish if a company, an investment in its economic activities makes a substantial contribution for one of the three objectives, which are related clearly to the three categories of stakeholders, and essentially copy and paste the environmental taxonomy, at the same time don't do significant harm and meet the minimum safeguards. What does it mean? It means that if you, for instance, as a company or as an investor, you make a substantial contribution on, for instance, decent work, so on your workforce, at the same time, you don't do significant harm on the other criteria or on the criteria related to the environment and governance. Sorry for the simplification, but I just wanted to give you the essence. So you will find in the text, which is available online, all the sub-objectives, which is, I would say, very comprehensive, probably extremely burdensome for implementation. If you consider that until last year, this kind of non-financial reporting was mainly voluntary, except for a few largest corporations. And often companies, investors don't have the data to do it, don't even understand how to collect the data, what kind of data to collect. So imagine that this is going to be really a process of adaptation and capacity building for all the economic actors. And sorry, you will have then now let me skip this part because we got too much into the details and probably that's not useful for our conversation. And yeah, if you are interested in looking at these things, what you will need then to look at are the technical screening criteria. So technical screening criteria are actually the criteria that are applied to investors and companies in order to define their alignment, this is the language, with the social taxonomy. Within the green taxonomy, all the technical screening criteria have been published. For the social taxonomy, not yet. But if you want the real battleground for the implementation of the social taxonomy will be on the definition of technical screening criteria. But at the same time, at the moment, we have just the principles upon which those criteria will be defined. And I'd like to conclude with a solution we have been working on, trying to developing a digital approach for the implementation of the European taxonomy in the market as almost a retail product. And the important question, so we are designing a digital platform aligned with the, which is essentially a fintech solution designed to promote sustainability in the financial markets and targeting in particular the SMEs. So it helps SMEs to define their ESG profile. ESG being the acronym coming from the market indicating sustainable finance. Somehow is the market translation of the taxonomy. The challenge here is to make the European regulation easy to apply for SMEs, so for small and medium-sized market players, and at the same time useful for the users. So as a tool that will help SMEs not just to define their sustainability profile, but also to benchmark against their industry or territory. And so it has to be simple, flexible, adaptable, evolutive, but also aligned with the market standards. I won't touch this, but just for you to know, besides the European taxonomy, there are also market-driven standards which might or might not align with the European taxonomy. And especially for international market players, that becomes a bit a mess because you have several standards to meet. But this is the world where we are living.
I'm sorry, Filippo, we need to, can you please summarize it a bit? Because we are really running out of time. Thank you very much.
Yes. So let me skip towards the end and just to give you the sense of the complexity that the implementation is facing, and what we are working on is actually the kind of challenge that everybody in the market is facing, meaning that there is an evolutionary approach in which the first of all, the challenge for market players is the ability to provide information to comply with the regulation, and to build the infrastructure and their capacity for their ESG reporting. Consider that what's happening in the market is that any kind of funding, public and private, credit and equity, is aligning with these criteria. So if you want to access funding, you need to be able to define your sustainability profile. And once you have put in place that, then there is the question about the scoring. So how sustainable your company, your investment is, and how you can improve it. So it's a further challenge. The issue and its success will boil down on a very simple question, driven by access to capital. So the success of this framework, sustainability framework, is connected to its effectiveness in leveraging capital. So we are moving far, and I'm closing here, just compared to what was probably what would be an approach of lawyers or academic or researchers in law. My point is policy and regulation define the framework, but it's capital and the ability of the framework to leverage capital, to attract capital, that makes the framework effective. So if regulation becomes just a hinder for companies, or in general for capital markets, it will die very soon. If, on the other hand, it's able to mobilize and attract private and public capital, then it will become a standard, and every market players will be, willing or not, forced to implement in their business strategy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I think I will give the floor to Mika Pico, if he's online. He should be. Are you there, Mika? Maybe not.
I'm here. Buongiorno tutti.
Buongiorno, I couldn't see you. Okay, now I can see you very well. Thank you very much. So I'll give the floor to you, to your presentation. Thank you very much for being with us. And you also have 20 minutes for your presentation. And thank you again.
Is it an Italian 20 minutes or Finnish 20 minutes? Can you see my slides now?
Yes, we can see them. Thank you.
Okay. Then I have been asked to tell the Finnish story, how we have been working in terms of impact investing and especially social outcomes contracting. And I do my best to tell you, let's say, most important and hopefully most useful information in order to have an idea that you can use that later. But before I start really to talk about social impact investing and social outcomes contracting, I would like to tell you some basic information concerning our country. You know, our population is 5.6 million people, only 5.6 million people, but we have a lot of local authorities. We have about 300 municipalities, which make our administration quite challenging because we have a central government and then we have a very independent 300 municipalities. And as you can understand, there are not too many people live in one municipalities when we are talking about, for example, our northeast part of Finland. And then, you know, I think that you have similar kind of challenges in your society. For example, rapidly changing age ratio. I have been told that Italy and Finland are maybe the most challenging countries in Europe at the moment in terms of a changing age ratio. And of course, COVID have influenced a lot to our society, as well as the war in Ukraine. You can understand we have a very long border with Russia, and everything what has happened during last week really influences to our society. And there are a lot of people who think that Finland is, as a part of the Nordic countries, we are like a paradise. But of course, there are a lot of things we really have at a good standard. But we have also a lot of problems which could be prevented. And here you can see a few examples concerning that kind of problems which could be prevented. Of course, this is not like a zero-sum game that we can avoid all this kind of problems, but I think that we all agree that when we are talking about physical inactivity, or especially type 2 diabetes, we can do very much in order to prevent that kind of problem. So anyway, in Finland, we have this kind of let's say summary of preventable problems at the moment, and we as taxpayers, we have to pay lots of money, billions of euros every year, in order to cover the cost of this kind of problems. And then more precisely to impact investing, our story in Finland started about 2014 when Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra started its development activities in terms of it. Sitra is a think and do tank working under the control of Finnish Parliament, and it's supposed to import some new ideas in terms of sustainable well-being, sustainable development of our society. And so Sitra decided to start to pilot the idea of impact investing in Finland. And as Filippo said already, when we started this all, we understood quite soon that when we are talking of this kind of new approach, it's a political game. And that was the reason that we understood quite soon that when we are talking of impact investing, and if we really want to be able to get some additional value coming from private capital, it has to be combined to public resources. So that was the reason that we quite soon decided in Sitra that we, in terms of impact investing and creating that kind of market in Finland, we have to focus on social outcomes contracting, and in terms of that to pilot social impact bond model, because that is the best possible way to combine private capital to public resources, taxpayers' money. And I'm saying we because I was in charge of those activities in Sitra. And then after Sitra's work, the Center of Expertise for Impact Investing was created or established to the part of Finnish government in January 2020. And I was also heading that entity until last summer when I started as a CEO of a Finnish Brain Association. So I have lived through these all steps of our development, I hope so, during last 8 years. But anyway, the center was established to the part of the Finnish government, and the main focus of that entity, the Center of Expertise for Impact Investing, was and is still to focus on outcomes contracting, and in order by doing that to also strengthen and create the whole impact investing market. And you have been told already that what this outcomes contracting means and what SIP model means, so I don't go this through, but I want to stop to this slide for a moment, because from our point of view, a couple of more reasons why we wanted to focus on this kind of approach was that we found out that when we are implementing the ideal outcomes contracting by using social impact bond, it's forcing different stakeholders to work together. And we found that very important. It has to be led by public administration, as Filippo said, and there has to be political support behind this all. But at the same time, it means that all possible stakeholders from private sector, from voluntary sector, from academics, they really have to work together. And we found that very important focal point in order to implement this idea, because in Finland we have been talking about really cooperation already years, and we have a quite nice tradition in many ways. But on the other hand, there's that kind of lack of real cooperation from some perspective, and we had the idea that by doing this we can really create and strengthen that kind of a basic ethos of cooperation in our society. And I think that these were maybe the most important reasons, once again, why we wanted to start to implement outcomes contracting and SIP model. We found out that is really the best way to combine public funds and private capital. And what is most important is that taxpayers' money is used only when the society has got what it really needs. We don't, taxpayers' money is not used to fund some structures, some operations without knowing if anything benefits can be created. And what was also very important for us was that when we are talking about outcomes contracting and SIP model and what can be achieved by using those, we recognized quite soon that it means that it's possible to make upfront investments to proactive and preventive actions. We have been talking in our society already years that how important is to work from a preventive perspective, but in practice we are focusing only to core. We are talking about our hospitals, our social and healthcare system. Of course, those systems and hospitals are important, but as I saw in previous slides, that there are a lot of problems which could be prevented. And so those hospitals could work also much better than they are working at the moment if we take out those people who shouldn't be necessary there. So again, we found very important aspect that when we are talking about social impact bond, we are talking about proactive and preventive approach, and it can be that kind of game changer to our society. We can really create the welfare state 2.0. And when we are talking about this kind of activities, we are talking about data-driven management, and at least in Finland, lots of people in private sector and everywhere, everybody is talking about data-driven management. And in this case, when public sector wants to work in this way, they can also say that our activities are based on data and management is driven based on that. And what is also important that when we are talking outcomes contracting SIP models is that focus is always on human and population groups, always on that issue. And when we know what we want to achieve in terms of that population group or anything what we want to anyway change, after that, we start to create structures and processes in order to achieve those goals, which are really beneficial for one particular population group. So they are not first structures as what is the normal way, at least in Finland, to run administration and public sector. First there are structures, and then we try to, those people who are working there, they try to do their best by using those structures, which can be not very good ones. And so this has been explained to you already, but maybe I stop for the moment for this picture, because I think that our social impact bond is a little bit different from others, because what we are doing and for what we are running the tendering process on behalf of public sector is running the tendering process is to choose the program or fund manager. There's that kind of entity which is chosen by using the tendering process based on procurement legislation. And when that entity is chosen, that entity is then in charge of everything in practice. It's in charge of raising private capital, and then normally it's a limited partnership as its legal status, the fund, and the program fund manager is also in charge of choosing best possible service providers, and that entity can also change during the process, those service providers. It's not that these A, B, C, and D are working from the year 1 to the final year. If they are not managed to achieve what they're supposed to manage, the fund program manager can change them. So this is also the very flexible system, which is based on coalition of different and the best possible service providers, the dream team, but the dream team can be also changed during the process. And one more thing, because I start to finish, is that when we are creating the basis for our social impact bond projects, we are focusing very much upfront work, and we call that process modeling. And here you can see how we are addressing the phenomenon. First, for example, if we are talking about how to prevent exclusion of youth, first we are working in order to get to create joint understanding between different stakeholders what youth exclusion means, and then we are analyzing what are those root causes, why some youth are in danger to exclude, or why some youth are doing well, and so on, so on. At the same time, we are also calculating. We are doing that kind of. We are calculating financial value of positive change. When we understand what are those root causes to which we have to influence, what kind of changes we have to make happen, then we are calculating what is the economical value of those changes from taxpayers' perspective. And of course, we are calculating and analyzing the human benefits. And when we are doing that, we are using all possible data. This is that kind of a mathematical processes, but at the same time we are using co-creation. So we are called together all possible stakeholders, all possible experts together in order to find best possible, to use the experiences, the educational background, but especially the experiences from practical life. And then we are combining that kind of practical experiences to that kind of hard data coming from different kind of data resources, registers, and so. And in order, by doing that, we are quite sure that we are able to create very solid basis for social impact bond models and create joint understanding between public sector as a bonus payer and private capital investors, and especially from the entity who is in charge of this also and service providers. And we have find out that modeling work is the best way in order to create indicators to measure if we are doing what we are supposed to do, if we are going to achieve what we have to achieve in terms of implementing the social impact bond and so on. So we are really saying that the modeling part, the upfront work, is the most important part of implementing social impact bond model in practice. When you are doing that modeling work well enough, everything else is quite easy. Not easy, of course there's challenges, but you have a clear understanding concerning the most important aspects. And what we want to do is to create this kind of ecosystem in order to work that to be sure that all stakeholders are working to the same direction, and we have a joint understanding what is the final impact goal, what we want to achieve, and what kind of changes we have to make happen in order to be able to achieve the final impact goal. And what we then measuring is, when I simplify a bit, are those changes happen, or are we able to strengthen that kind of positive determinants in order to be able to achieve the final impact? So this is quite simple. This is not the rocket science at all when we are doing that modeling and create that kind of joint understanding. So the lights are going off if I don't move. And here you can see the table, what kind of social impact bonds we have had in Finland. The occupational well-being was the first one, because the people who are working in the public sector, the sick leave days are much more higher than in the private sector. And the second one was the fast employment and integration of migrants. Kotoship, maybe you have heard about that. It seems to be very successful. And then only one more slides. Now, when I'm working for the national for Finnish Brain Associates, we have started to prepare a national domestic brain health program. And what is the idea is that we are addressing the phenomenon called brain health from a very proactive perspective, from protective factors point of view, and we are going to also do the very practical implementation plan. And especially my big dream is that at least part of the implementation of this national brain health program can be done in practice by usual outcomes contracting or SIP model in practice. Thank you. I hope that I was really able to give some useful information, and I am happy to answer your questions afterwards. You are free to send me email or call me, and I'm really happy to tell more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mika. Thank you to both you and Filippo for your very extremely interesting presentations. I'll now leave the floor to Giulio Pasi, who will speak in Italian, so I will switch to Italian also. Grazie Giulio per essere con noi, ti cedo subito la parola visto che appunto siamo un po' stretti coi tempi e ti ringrazio molto per aver accettato il nostro invito e cedo.
Grazie. Beh, io inizio confessando una certa difficoltà, un po' in ritardo, vorrei stringere la durata del mio intervento e al tempo stesso avevo preparato alcuni punti che mi sarebbe piaciuto toccare oggi. Dopo la prima sessione di stamattina li ho eliminati e ho deciso di cambiare un po' il tipo di intervento. Durante la pausa ho messo a fuoco i punti e poi è arrivato Filippo Addari e quindi li cambio un'altra volta. Quello che non cambio è il ringraziamento, ovviamente, il ringraziamento per l'invito, ma ho pensato i ringraziamenti sono sempre un po' noiosi, sembrano un po' dovuti e quindi io cerco sempre di chiedermi perché ringrazio, no? Perché l'invito in sé è sicuramente un motivo di gratitudine, ma non dice ancora molto. E la gratitudine mia è sostanzialmente dovuta al fatto che è un invito non solo ad intervenire, ma anche ad uscire da una bolla. A me capita di intervenire su questi temi spesso, sia in Italia che fuori, e diciamo chi interviene di solito sono sempre gli stessi, ci si vede, ci si conosce, si diventa amici, però il dibattito ne risente. E devo dire che la gratitudine è sostanzialmente dovuta al fatto che mi è permesso oggi, come dire, di uscire, no, un po' dalla bolla e confrontarmi con diciamo un approccio anche non tradizionale al tema, perché è legato al diritto del lavoro, alla trasformazione del mercato del lavoro, alle sfide che questo comporta in termini di sistemi di protezione sociale e quindi in fondo toccando il tema del contratto sociale. Quindi io vorrei focalizzarmi su questo punto. Prima di questo però vorrei anch'io approfittare, come ha fatto Filippo Addari, per condividere alcuni punti molto, molto sintetici che però credo che siano importanti. C'è un problema terminologico che spesso viene sottovalutato. Io credo che la pulizia concettuale nel linguaggio che si adopera è fondamentale perché ci mette in salvo da possibili errori o confusioni o incomprensioni. Io credo che ad esempio sia importante riflettere sulla differenza tra sostenibilità, quindi finanza sostenibile, investimenti ad impatto, impact investing, ESG, sono cose diverse tra di loro. Io credo che non possano essere messe insieme sin dall'inizio. L'obiettivo potrebbe essere quello, come dire, di trovare una sistemazione che le tenga insieme e le tenga in maniera, le prenda in considerazione in maniera coordinata, però bisogna prima distinguere per poi unire. E in questo senso credo che anche il tema, ad esempio, social impact bond, che poi è diventato un po' desueto oggigiorno perché si parla di social outcome contract principalmente, proprio per evitare l'equivoco del bond che non è bond ma è legame. In questo senso io credo che un po' di pulizia sia importante farla, ad esempio riconoscendo una cosa che veniva accennata da Filippo Addari nella ricostruzione della tassonomia, cioè un conto è non generare danno attraverso un'attività economica, un conto è generare un impatto sociale positivo. Sono due cose diverse e che dal punto di vista anche dell'investitore si comportano, richiedono meglio un comportamento differente. C'è una dichiarazione dell'altro giorno nel nuovo report nel nuovo rapporto, diciamo, di impatto di Tesla, dove sostanzialmente si dice l'attuale reporting ESG non misura l'ampiezza dell'impatto positivo sul mondo, invece si focalizza sulla misura del dollaro, del valore diciamo, del rapporto rischio-ritorno. Sviluppano, come dire, questo tipo di osservazione fino poi a concludere dicendo poiché il mondo ha bisogno di lottare per un impatto positivo sostanziale, noi non ci riferiremo in questo rapporto a ESG, ci riferiremo invece a impatto. Allora, questo secondo me è un elemento interessante, poi ci sono tanti dettagli più tecnici, ma non c'è tempo. Però questo è un punto secondo me interessante, ed è un punto anche interessante quando si parla di una cosa che è stata menzionata, che è quella dell'impact washing o social washing. Lì ci sono tanti livelli che possono essere affrontati. Io, dal mio punto di vista, per la formazione, per il tipo di attività che faccio, ho notato che nel dibattito attuale spesso si utilizzi questa espressione impact washing sostanzialmente in una logica blame and shame, cioè per dire che ci sono dei cattivi che sostanzialmente utilizzano tutto questo discorso sulla sostenibilità e sull'impatto come un'operazione, diciamo, di trucco, di maquillage, e quindi di marketing. Io credo che in realtà non sia sempre così. Credo che il problema dell'impact washing e del social washing, cioè attori del sistema economico che dichiarano di generare un impatto quando poi in realtà, andando a vedere sotto sotto, quell'impatto non è poi così reale, credo che dipenda anche non solo, come dire, in alcuni casi sicuramente sarà la malafede, ma nel più dei casi io credo che oggigiorno dipenda, come dire, da un'assenza di quella che io chiamo impact literacy, cioè non siamo capaci di dire qual è l'impatto che generiamo. Tante volte riteniamo di generare un impatto ben superiore a quello che poi in effetti generiamo. Quindi, chiudo qui il primo set di considerazioni un po' a reazione di quello che avevo sentito, e torno, come dire, sulla questione di fondo che mi sta a cuore. Che cosa c'entra tutto questo discorso che stiamo facendo, no, sulla finanza, sul cambiamento della finanza con il welfare, e welfare come risposta a un cambiamento profondo del mercato del lavoro, e non solo. Beh, io credo che, e si può guardare il caso specifico dei social outcome contract, la cosa più interessante che possiamo notare è, come dire, è che la storia si ripete. Adesso non voglio fare l'hegeliano della sala, però se uno pensa a come si è formato il welfare state dal punto di vista dei processi istituzionali, sociali e istituzionali che hanno portato, come dire, all'immersione del welfare state, bisogna riconoscere che il welfare state, no, questa non è un'idea mia, è un'idea di Maurizio Ferrera, che si basa su Polanyi, su altri. Il welfare state nasce in una forma non istituzionalizzata come la conosciamo oggi, nasce sostanzialmente come effervescenza sociale, no? Come effervescenza sociale in risposta alla grande questione sociale che poneva la rivoluzione industriale. Erano risposte disorganizzate, non coordinate, con poca efficienza, spontanee, venivano dal basso, ma lì iniziano a nascere alcuni tentativi di risposta alle questioni, no, che emergevano dal punto di vista sociale. E poi inizia un processo di istituzionalizzazione che porta, come dire, a quello che conosciamo oggi come welfare state. Io mi occupo molto di innovazione sociale e spesso questo tema viene considerato come una sorta di viene considerato in contrapposizione al welfare state, quindi abbiamo il welfare state, matrice pubblica, ben definito, che offre protezione, e poi c'è, come dire, l'innovazione sociale, che è un nice to have, no? È qualcosa di carino, che insomma come i nanetti che si mettono in giardino, se uno ci pensa bene e pensa come è nato il welfare state, appunto partendo da questa effervescenza sociale, in fondo possiamo dire, stiracchiando un po' le definizioni e magari dando fastidio a qualche teorico dell'innovazione sociale di stampo più, diciamo, pragmatico, il mio amico Jeff Magan e altri, però il welfare state è forse la più grande innovazione sociale che abbiamo visto nel secolo scorso, emergere e stabilizzarsi nel secolo scorso. Tra l'altro, questo è un lavoro che io non sono mai riuscito a finire, quindi se c'è qualcuno che vuole aggregarsi, molto contento, però c'è un dato che si può notare che secondo me è molto interessante. Se uno va a vedere innovazione sociale, no? Quando si parla di innovazione sociale, perché ci sono dei momenti in cui se ne parla di più e dei momenti in cui se ne parla di meno? Se uno va a vedere la produzione, diciamo, la letteratura sull'innovazione sociale e la va a mettere su una linea del tempo, si accorge che il numero di pubblicazioni sul tema innovazione sociale raggiunge dei picchi nell'intorno di anni che di solito vengono anche, come dire, identificati come le rivoluzioni industriali. No? Questo secondo me è una cosa che io non ho mai approfondito, mi piacerebbe approfondirla, è come dire la base per una futura riflessione, una futura ricerca, che però mi sembra già sufficientemente indicativa di quello che c'è in ballo. Cioè quello che c'è in ballo non è tanto una nuova asset class. Questo è un tema, come dire, che ho discusso spesso anche dentro, diciamo, il Global Steering Group for Impact Investing, quindi la ex task force del G8 sull'impact investing. C'è un serio problema, secondo me, perché non si possono, se noi pensiamo ai social impact bond, oggettivamente occorre come dire, occorre uno sforzo notevole per immaginare un social impact bond come un asset class. Non che non possa essere tale, ma che cosa fa un social impact bond? Un social impact bond sostanzialmente, che è poi finanza di progetto, di fatto finanza di progetto dove sostanzialmente il cash flow è identificabile, come dire, nella differenza dell'autostrada, come dire, in un'assenza di uscite, no, future per conto della pubblica amministrazione. Ma poi se andate a vedere un po' la letteratura sul project finance ci sono molte similarità, e quindi ovviamente non è scalabile, salvo, come dire, casi particolari, è però replicabile. Ma quello che secondo me è interessante, ad esempio, di questi strumenti è che permettono una reingegnerizzazione della spesa pubblica. E chiudo, per sottolineare questo punto, chiudo raccontando un episodio che credo sia importante, perché fa vedere come la partita su questo tipo di tema è ancora molto aperta, e quindi è, come dire, un invito, no, a proseguire questo dialogo. Allora, 3 anni fa vengo contattato ero coinvolto con il Global Steering Group for Impact Investing, con i vari National Advisory Board che si occupano, come dire, di promuovere, no, la finanza d'impatto nel mondo, e vengo contattato perché era stato commissionato uno studio a una grande società di consulenza che non citerò, però è una, diciamo, delle 4-5 grosse, e avete quindi un 20-25% di possibilità di azzeccarla, dove era stato commissionato questo studio da presentare al G20. Allora mi chiedono di commentarlo, mi mandano questo studio, che essendo di una società di consulenza era in realtà una presentazione PowerPoint, e passo le prime slide dove non c'erano particolari definizioni e mi fermo su una in particolare. La guardo, la riguardo e inizio a sentire una certa preoccupazione. Cosa avevano rappresentato in questo grafico? Avevano fatto sostanzialmente un ranking tra i vari paesi appartenenti al G20 e anche altri, per dire dove il mercato impact investing era più sviluppato e più maturo. Ma quali erano le variabili che avevano considerato? Avevano considerato, beh, sull'asse orizzontale c'era GDP per person, che va bene, nel senso, beyond GDP, andiamo oltre, però capisco la difficoltà nel trovare delle alternative e va bene, su quello si poteva chiudere un occhio. Sull'asse verticale c'era impact investing, asset under management, ratio, diviso social public expenditure. Allora, questo voglio dire, io insomma, ho fatto anche un po' di economia, non sono un grande matematico, però mio figlio con 11 anni un po' di idee sulle frazioni le ha anche lui, no? La dimensione del denominatore, se aumenta, significa che si riduce il valore assoluto, no? A quel punto io sottolineo questo problema perché ovviamente qual era il risultato del grafico? Beh, top scorer, Stati Uniti, poi Australia, UK, tutta una serie di stati, soprattutto del sud-est asiatico, e in fondo fanalini di coda i paesi europei, perché ovviamente se al denominatore c'è la spesa sociale pubblica, per forza di cose si finisce lì. Anche io scrivo e dico, guardate che bisogna fare attenzione, non voglio fare una teoria dello Stato, ma è un suicidio, perché voi state andando a presentare questa cosa ai governi, e la spesa sociale gli state dicendo che se verrà ridotta, la performance, l'outlook del paese il prossimo anno sarà migliore. Peccato che la spesa sociale è quella che costruisce il consenso politico. Quindi state chiedendo a dei governi di spararsi nei piedi. A prescindere, come dire, dalla teoria, no, dello Stato, dalla teoria dei mercati, teoria della spesa pubblica, no, dico anche perché appunto non sarei entrato a discutere di questi aspetti con una consultancy. Però cosa succede? Che su quel tema si crea, come dire, per la prima volta una all'interno del GSG, quindi di questo gruppo ex G8, si crea sostanzialmente una coalizione tra i paesi europei che dicono sì, in effetti questo è un problema per noi, no? E io credo che questo sia rappresentativo, come dire, della sfida che abbiamo davanti. Cioè dobbiamo capire che cosa c'entra questo ripensamento, questo tentativo di fondare o aggiustare un paradigma economico rispetto, come dire, al percorso che fin qui abbiamo fatto con, diciamo, una risposta alla questione sociale che si chiama welfare state. L'ipotesi che lascio è che, riprendendo l'idea, come dire, della reingegnerizzazione della spesa pubblica, l'ipotesi che lascio, anche un po' teorica, per eventualmente riflettere insieme prossimamente, è che questi strumenti sono quegli strumenti che probabilmente diventano, come dire, funzionali a un processo di ricalibratura della spesa pubblica, dove vengono distribuiti e gestiti i rischi non solo ed esclusivamente finanziari, ma anche, come dire, politici, connessi ad esempio alla sperimentazione di politiche innovative. Immaginatevi con i soldi pubblici una sperimentazione che arrivasse a dire no, non funziona. Dal punto di vista, diciamo, formale la cosa è ottima, ma dal punto di vista della legittimazione del politico che ha spinto per quel tipo di sperimentazione non la si fa perché si vuole che funzioni a tutti i costi, si fa per capire se funziona o no, e quindi si considera l'ipotesi che non funzioni, e scoprire che una cosa non funziona è un risultato. Ma questo ha un costo politico che attualmente nessuno è in grado di farsi carico, per tante ragioni. Forse questi strumenti ci permettono di giocare su questo fronte, come ci consentono di giocare sul fronte, diciamo, di uno spostamento, una diversa allocazione delle risorse, no? Se abbiamo bisogno di passare da vecchi rischi bisogni a nuovi rischi bisogni, il passaggio netto significa sostanzialmente lasciare uno scoperto. Se questo spostamento può avvenire in maniera graduale, con una copertura e un apporto, come dire, esterno dal punto di vista, diciamo, delle risorse finanziarie, beh, questa potrebbe essere un'altra strada. Ho fatto due esempi per dire forse bisognerebbe iniziare a pensare a questo mondo della finanza di impatto come strumento di reingegnerizzazione della spesa pubblica e in particolare di ricalibratura del welfare.
Molte grazie Giulio anche per questo tuo aneddoto finale. Allora, terminerei questa sessione, iniziamo subito la ultima sessione di questa giornata, quindi I'd like to have here Charles and Homroy, and we're going to start with the section Corporate Governance, Finance and Social Partners. And you have, I think, the presentation and we will share it.